Hi, and thank you for joining us at the Queer House at Sundance. It's brought to you by Outfest and GLAAD. I'm Mike Dougherty. I'm the Director of Programming for Outfest, and I'm joined today by the talent behind the wonderful film The World to Come, directed by Mona Fastvold. It is playing in the Spotlight section at Sundance, and we're happy to be joined today by some of the talent responsible. Please help me welcome. You're not here with me, but I'm welcomed by Mona Fastvold, the director, David Hinojosa, the producer, and Katherine Waterston, who stars in the film. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
To be here.
I'm really excited to talk about this film. It's absolutely fantastic. People might have heard it won the Queer Lion at the Venice Film Festival where it premiered, which obviously puts it on the map for our community to take note and watch. It's going to be released generally in February in the US by Bleecker Street, so we're all very excited. But I want to take us back to the beginning. And Mona, to start with you, if you could talk a little bit about this film is adapted from a short story by Jim Shepard, and I believe Jim adapted the screenplay as well. And I was curious how the film came to you and what appealed to you about the story that you felt the need to direct.
Well, the screenplay was written by Ron Hansen and Jim Shepard together, based on Jim's short story of the same name, which is really beautiful as well. The short story, and the film lies quite close to the original short story as well. I think what struck me immediately was the beauty of the language. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was very beautifully written, and then I thought that there was something so lovely and interesting about the relationship that develops between Abigail and Tally, because it is this incredibly lovely conversation that just keeps going over scenes, over days, that could go on forever. And that's that sort of connection, that really incredible sort of feeling of meeting someone and that's listening to you, and that you're finishing each other's thoughts in that way, and having that experience really struck something with me, and I thought it was universal and beautiful, and it felt like and also the love story really had potential to just really celebrate this relationship. It was less about sort of the things that can feel sometimes in these kinds of stories. There can be a lot of focus on guilt or shame, or why am I this way, or people being upset by you being this way, or having these feelings. And the focus for in the story felt much more like centered on isn't this the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me in my life, and how isn't this just blowing my mind that I get to have this connection. And that felt exciting, and it had all this beautiful cinematic potential as well visually.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. You mentioned that the film, you feel, ultimately stays true to Jim's story, but I'm just wondering, you've typically written films that you've worked on, and you've written films for other directors, and is this the first time that you've directed something that you haven't written yourself? And what do you feel like? Was there pressure to kind of stay close and faithful to the writing that Jim and his co-writer did, or did you feel like you had the freedom to bring more to it from your perspective?
Yes, no, I'd never even thought of directing something that I hadn't written myself. So it was a very strange experience to want to move into someone else's work like that. But no, a screenplay is a recipe. It is not a, it's not a finished project. So a screenplay is just is suggestions. And there's no Jim and Ron were incredibly collaborative, and they said, yes, okay, let's try this. And they were making changes, and we were exploring it together during way before pre-production, and it was really no, it's different than with a play where you're just really the text is sacred, and you're really trying to just find a new way into it. This is a screenplay is movable, so I had a lot of freedom.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about the text and the visuals, and I want to bring Katherine into this because something that I noted about the performance that I thought might have been an appealing challenge for you is a lot of we get narrated a lot of the story through your character's diary entries and letters, and it's a lot of voiceover, but you're performing on screen kind of interior when this text is all happening. I'm just wondering, is that an appealing challenge for an actor, and kind of what was the process of that? Is the voiceover recorded first and then you act it, or you act it and then you write the voiceover?
Yeah, it's a wonderful challenge. I mean, I don't even know if it's a challenge. It's just such an amazing opportunity, you know, such a gift to an actor, you know, on so many levels. One, it did so much of my homework for me, because usually what we do is we get a story, we assume someone is showing only a fraction of themselves, and we try to piece out what is behind that fraction that they show. And here I have this wealth of information about her, what's really going on inside. And then on another level, it appealed to me because it sort of felt as though I was playing two people. I had the opportunity to, yes, give voice to a character's inner life, which is something that so grabs you in a novel, right? The interior voice. And we rarely get to express that, obviously, in this visual format. So that was really interesting. It also really struck me how the voiceover was truly interwoven into the story. It wasn't an add-on. Mona and I talked about this a lot. It was obvious on my first read that Ron and Jim had carefully constructed this script to, there's just like a number of dances within the story, right? There's like the obvious dance between Tally and Abigail of kind of discovering each other, getting to know one another, daring to reveal themselves to each other. There's also the slightly more awkward dances between the hetero couples, you know, of misunderstanding, the failed dances within those relationships. And then there's this right there on the page, this extraordinary dance between this character's inner and exterior life, you know? And so all of that, it was so stimulating. And I think when I try to identify what draws me to particular projects, you know, what's the through line? It's something that is just so fucking stimulating that I think it will hold my attention. Because, you know, film sets are distracting, and what every director counts on, I think, above all from their actors, is that they stick with it and that they focus on it and give everything to it until they're allowed to go home. And so for me, I just need something that is that fascinating to be able to kind of guarantee I'll be able to do that for the director. So this one, like, there was just no shortage of things to work on and explore. And like Mona and I have said a lot, like, we could have just made this movie for like a year and a half and never burnt out, because there was just so much to ponder and play with and try. It's really just one of the most extraordinary scripts I've ever seen. And I'm kind of bewildered and amazed that I got to be a part of it.
Yeah, you've opened up many threads that I want to explore. I want to hold on to the.
This is the nature of lockdown, man. Like, I'm in my house all day, alone and quiet, you know. And then you ask me one question, and 45 minutes later, I'm just about done with the answer.
This is where, like, this is me doing my easy transitions between questions. So people are like, she just spoke so beautifully about acting, but I'm going back to visuals for a second.
Do your thing.
Because like the text is so rich, but the visual design of the film is so gorgeous and impressive and grand. And Mona, I wondered how much of that was on the page and what the discussions were about how it would look and feel, and how many departments were involved in bringing that visual design together.
It was, yeah, no, the film is, the script was a lot of just really amazing text and great scenes, but most of them were just kitchen table. And then they would describe something in nature that would be almost impossible for me to create, like, you know, like lots of wild animals like running, you know, things like that, rabbits, you know, searching for a treat or something. So they allowed me to just kind of just change some of those for other things and break the scenes up and have them move into more work, because I do think that women of that time period were just always doing something. You're just busy. So just always having work to do, having chores to do together. But yes, we really, I work closely with my production designer, Jean on creating this whole universe, building all the houses from the ground up, and scouting the mountains in Romania to find the perfect place to build and find the landscape that would be cinematic, exciting, and also mirror the time period. So that was a big part of our process. And we had a long process, long pre-production, soft pre-production. Even before we had the money together, we had a lot of time to work on the film, because we were waiting on Katherine for a little bit. So
I was pregnant.
Yes.
We really wanted to shoot like a kind of flashback, remember, like a flashback sort of water breaking scene. And I was finding locations in London, because I lived in this neighborhood, this sort of like Georgian neighborhood at the time. And, we'd find some location where we could just like, have me there with my huge belly and splat some water on the ground. But insurance is a bitch when it comes to pregnant women. It's a real drag, and they wouldn't let us do it.
I was hoping to just have you pregnant in the movie. I was just like, that's exciting.
It's one of the great tragedies of filmmaking, that you can't use real pregnant women.
Yeah, no, it's hard, and it's a different thing than to fake it.
It is.
It's really, yeah. So, but no. So we had a lot of time to really to sort of to play around with that, with and to spend so much time with the help of the writers as well. Just going into all those details and just really geeking out on that in a wonderful, creative way.
It's really amazing when when you're a part of a film and then you see the finished product and you see these kind of dialogues articulated visually, like the dialogue between really so much of the film is this exploration of interiority and then this wonderful counterbalance of what we show, right? And then doubled with the sort of isolation and physical interiority of these scenes that play out across a kitchen table, and the kind of almost sometimes claustrophobia felt there, and then these expansive landscapes, and just the way that Mona translated what we saw on the page, that kind of constant tension and conversation between the inner and the outer. It was really exciting. So much of that stuff, when they get up at dawn and shoot a bit of the sunrise or something, the actors aren't there. We don't see those shots, those little found moments and things. And it was really exciting to me to see that.
But the house that's also one of the reasons we had to go and shoot there, is also because you have to have, in this universe, the house has to be very small in a wide. You need to have that perspective. You have to have that juxtaposition. If I could only shoot, a much smaller part of the universe, you wouldn't feel that loneliness and isolation.
I mean, that is I think Katherine elucidated it beautifully, the tension that just makes this film so fascinating to watch. And of course, the tension between the two leads is the most crucial aspect of the casting. And you mentioned, Mona, that you were waiting for Katherine to be available to make it, and I'm just wondering if you could talk a little about choice of Katherine and Vanessa as the central couple, and what you felt they were going to bring to the roles that made them the right choices.
What I thought, sorry, I lost you for a second. What I thought would be why I cast
the choice of Katherine and Vanessa.
What were you thinking, basically?
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
I don't spend a lot of time on casting unless I have to. It's not something I usually, upon working on a project that I begin to write, I like to write for someone in mind. So looking at the script, when I was thinking, is this for me? I think it's for me. And then immediately I thought, yes, it's going to be Katherine, and then it's going to be really good. So that was just, it was instinctively that felt really right. And she agreed, which was good. But I think it was, to me, Katherine all her performances are so subtle, which I love. And I thought was very important for Abigail, that you need to have this feeling that there's a secret and you want to lean in and you want to know what it is. And that sort of, and also with the voiceover, it had to be very, very delicate the way that is delivered. It's her internal voice, can't really be projected much. Like it has to, we worked on that for such a long time. What is, Katherine, like, what is this internal voice that I'm going to share with everyone else, and how do I do that? And so that, those things were really important with Abigail. And then I also just love that you're tall and that a little bit taller than Casey, and that you kind of, you know, that there's this, they feel really equal. They feel like partners. They didn't feel these people are running this farm together and they are just equally strong. And, and I like that. I like that with
a good worker.
That's a good worker. And I think that was nice with Vanessa too. She has authority and intelligence, and she also has great comedic timing and this energy. So I felt like the combination of them, I could see the relationship progress because of that. I could see the pauses that Katherine chooses to take in text, and sort of how she wants to, her rhythm combined with Vanessa, you know, kind of eager energy.
Persistence,
like, yeah, things are going to happen here. So that was the thought behind that.
And Katherine, could you talk a little bit about working with Vanessa so closely and creating the intimacy and the chemistry, and how she is as a scene partner, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, she's great. You know, it's so rare for women to get to go, especially sort of contemporaries, to get to go toe to toe, you know, maybe the occasional sort of family drama, right? And so it's really exciting to, you know, we just so rarely imagine we're going to get to play these kinds of scenes with our colleagues who we admire. We watch them in films and we don't get to work with them, you know? So I was so thrilled it was her, because yeah, I guess what I'm always looking for in a co-star is someone who is willing to play with me, right? Like who is willing to, who is, I don't know, not trying to, I think that there's a big difference between, this is so cheesy. I don't know why I can only think of saying this in the cheesiest way, like trying to get something real or trying to get something true and trying to get something right. And when you're working with people who try to get something right, you find they're often kind of in their own performance bubble by themselves. And what's really exciting when you complete what helps an actor lose themselves in the scene is a partner who is there with you, really present and able to respond to what you throw at them in any given take. And when that starts going, when you really trust your partner and you know, I can surprise her, she's not going to miss it, she's going to catch it, she's going to throw something back at me, and that energy gets created from that exchange, then it's just like, that's just the dream. So, you know, I think in a way, chemistry is kind of a myth. Like, it's not about, oh, you know what, we just had this special je ne sais quoi, this little spark of thing. It comes out of a connection and performance where the script has tension built into it. So we don't have to do the job of generating that. We just have to follow it, listen to it, and listen to each other. And then you feel, oh, there's this spark here. And it's like, it's the force of that collaboration, really, that you're feeling, I think. It doesn't hurt to love the person, and we just loved each other from the minute we met, you know. That's luck, that helps, that makes, I don't think that creates the chemistry though. I think it creates the trust maybe that leads to the chemistry. So maybe it counts, I don't know. But yeah, yeah, just a dream partner, and all of the actors, really. It's not, all of the characters are really complex in this film. So, and all of the scenes are rich and interesting. So, you know, it also applies to the work I did with Casey and the little bit of stuff I got to do with Chris, is that, you know, yeah, they were tennis match scenes, and it was just great that it was a full cast of people who understood how to, I guess, how to play.
Thank you for that. That's such a refreshing answer, because I feel like when I usually ask actors that kind of a question, they do give the answer of like, it was just this special je ne sais quoi that we had, and like
Yeah.
that was so great to hear. Thank you.
Oh.
I want to kind of pull back to the beginning again in the conception of this and bring you in, David.
Say that.
Thank you. So as a director of programming of a queer film festival and part of the queer community that watches these films, you know, as we've had more and more opportunity to see our stories on screen, this conversation has started about, you know, who gets to tell stories that are about queer people and who gets to play those roles. And I'm just wondering if that was a discussion in the conception of this film, and how you feel like this film fits into that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it was a discussion to answer the question. I think the way I look at it is, it's great that we're in a place that we can take on the kind of second and third layer of this conversation. I think even when I started my career a dozen or so years ago, you could only push the line so far. It's like, okay, there can be kind of a gay character, but it was still in that place of like, you know, bad things have to happen. There was one lane for what you could do. And I think now we can kind of have far more zeroed in conversations about representation, about the authorship behind the representation, about a fluidity. I think executives at studios, I think the people who handle the money, it's a very holistic thing, are all engaged in a way that they weren't, you know, 10 years ago. So I think in general, it's a very good place. I'm making a film now where we're out looking for a very specific kind of actor to play the role, and, you know, the studio will greenlight it based on that. And so I was glad when Mona brought this to me, because I felt like we could bring something new to the conversation. I felt like it was both a part of a lineage of films, but it was also taking it a step further. So it was absolutely a part of the conversation, but I think it aligned perfectly with the pieces we were looking for.
And another conversation that's happening that I feel has gotten a little hyperbolic is I think the thing that this film has working in the conversation is that it's coming as the third in a series of 3 films that happen to be about queer women in a period piece. And some chatter online has gotten to the point where it's like, why is that all we ever get? And, you know, again, as I say, as a queer festival programmer, I can name you 15 movies that came out in the past year that don't fit into that mold, that are about queer women. And I love seeing any story about queer people. And I also think it's important that we remember that queer people have been around for much longer than our stories have been able to be told. So I love it when these movies come out, but I'm just wondering, Mona, if that was even in your mind in conceiving of this, and how you're thinking of it as that conversation has come up, has changed or evolved.
Well, we also have to remember that it takes a really long time to make films. So those 3 little beautiful films that are coming out now have all been in the works for years and years and years. So they're just coming out in this order, but it doesn't mean that one wasn't
just to say that
before the other.
They're also very different in execution.
Yes.
So, like, it feels to me very, very limiting to just box them all together and say this is all we get. Like that.
Yes. I mean, I first of all, I think that it's really important to look at the past. Especially when you're going into sort of chartering new territory in the future, you have to look at the past. And I like looking at the past. Me as a filmmaker, I find it more difficult to make something that's contemporary, because what is now, because then all the symbols and the things you use as a filmmaker, they aren't defined yet in a way. So when I look at a piece from the past, I can choose absolutely everything. Every detail has a specific meaning to me, and I can choose that meaning. But the present is now, and none of that is defined yet. So I find that to be more difficult. But, you know, I would love for someone to do it. And I want to see queer films in the past and in the future and in the present. But yes, as we spoke of as well, I wish it was a trend, but 3 films does not a trend make. I mean, I wish it was just coming out left and right, all bunch of period pieces about queer people. But no, it's just too little. But I do think that and also the thing is with making a period piece is that it isn't necessarily accurate. I mean, in many ways we try to be as accurate as possible, but it is my interpretation of what could have happened. So it's completely subjective, and therefore, it belongs to the future as well, I think.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. I had wanted to ask that because, in many ways we don't have like a historical record of how women who might have gotten into a relationship in the mid 1800s would have reacted to that. So you're saying like it's kind of, it's guesswork on your, not guesswork is probably the bad word, but like it's your own version of what could have occurred based on what you know about humans and how they react, right?
Yeah, and based on how much research we could do and what we get our hands on, but it's usually upper class. There's not much written down from farmers and workers and people of this class. It's nothing.
Doesn't exist. I tried to do research and it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And
there's Anne Lister's diaries, and she was like an upper class English woman, and
yeah.
So in that sense, in a way, right, it sort of frees you up to imagine a past that had moments that actually more mirror present day and where we've come to than we imagine the past would have. In a rural community where you don't have like the threat of being ostracized, you don't have the society's views hanging over you. Do you, in a way, see a story that's quite a lot more free than you'd imagine could have happened in the past?
Mm-hmm.
And to think that we come from these people, right? That these stories might have existed or they might have happened, and we are the great and great-grandchildren of these women who, on more levels than who they were free to love, were not free. And it's, I don't know, we've talked a lot about this, just how moving that is to feel and reconsider that history that, oh my God, had women in it. It's just easy to forget. And we imagine them like these reenactment centers that you can go to and, like colonial Williamsburg. And we imagine these women with no desires except for to churn butter. And they were as complete and rich and complex and filled with desire as we are. It's I feel it's an examination of that.
One little thing I'll add on, we faced a somewhat similar commentary on a movie we did called Carol a few years ago, and really for us, like, that was kind of the point, was to say that these women were always there. So I think it was addressing the erasure of that.
Yeah.
Whereas in cinema, it's like we can have like endless Westerns and like buddy comedies and like nobody's complaining about that. But now we're saying, oh no, like too many two women in period.
Why are there
movies.
yeah.
It's like, because like Katherine said, like they are part of our family history, and that is not accurately documented anywhere.
It's funny, right? It actually, in a way, hearing there are too many is an indication of how few there are, actually, because it so stands out to people that they feel, oh, 3 is a lot.
We got one French, we got one British, we got one Scandinavian American, and that's it. But no, I think, you look at those, I love looking at the old family photographs, and then you always see, the aunt and her companion, and that's the story. It's always been the companion. But it's part of all of our family histories. It's all there. It just hasn't been, it hasn't been been told much. So claiming a place in history, I think, is important.
absolutely. And I think this film is such an exciting step towards more of that. And I do too hope it's a trend, Mona. And I can't wait to see what this film inspires in other filmmakers. I want to thank you all for joining me for this discussion. It's such a wonderful film, and thank you for giving your time. Congratulations on the success it's had so far, and here's to more success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks
us.
for
This was
having
fun.
us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.